So we're gonna work on a 4-horse Kohler. It'll be a K91. I pretty much have everything prepped to put together. Everything in this video, they're used parts. I'm not going through and doing a full rebuild. The person before me that had this engine actually put a 10-over piston in it at one point, and the bore still checks out good. The rod and the crank look good. Looks like it's pretty much all reusable stuff. So we're just giving it a quick cylinder hone already, kind of deglaze it, and then lap the valves, disassembled it, beforehand, do all this other work, and then we're gonna kind of go through and put it back together and show you how it goes. Basically gonna build a long block today and see how this goes here quick. So first off, I've already put the valve springs and the parts that the keepers on the valves will go against in the bottom of there. They're a real pistol to get in and out of there. There is a part of casting there that the spring has to go up onto, and then the bottom with the retainer part slides in. So then you'll do that first, and then we're gonna flip this thing up, show you the inside. Kind of looks like this. We're gonna have our lifters will go through here, so we're gonna do that first. I like to use a small bottle, put 10W30 motor oil in it. Like to kind of pre-lube everything as I put it together. Alright. Make sure you get some lubrication on all these parts as you put them in there. It's not real critical to make sure that the lifters are in the right spot. They're all pretty much they're gonna wear slightly different from each other, but this is a slow RPM application. It's not like a car engine where it's super critical, but can be if you want to be performance ended. So those basically will set in 2 holes down here in the bottom, here and here. They just slide in there. Then we're going to take and put our cam in there. The cam has a rod through it that supports it. That's what it spins on. This is the governor weights and cap. So when you just slide this out, we're going to put this inside the block. One thing you want to make note is that you have your governor arm already installed before you put this in there, because if you put this in, you'll have to take it back out to get this arm in there on this particular model. It has like an L on the end. I don't know if you can see it in there well, but the L on the end that's swinging back and forth has to be upward like this, so that the dome on the governor can ride against it. So another trick I do also, my dot for timing marks is right here, and I actually use a white paint marker on this and on my crankshaft. So on this and the crankshaft, I white them so that you can line your timing marks up easier. So we'll install this next. So this pin, once it's slid through that cam, is going to be sticking out a little bit. So what you're going to need to do at this point is take a hammer and a punch and press that in until it's flush. So you just very easily just tap it in there. Want to try to hit it flat if you can, also to help keep from mushrooming the end. So we got it that far. It's still just a bit above the surface. So what we want to do is We're going to lay this down. Then we're going to use a punch that's just slightly smaller diameter and give it just a tap. Alright, now it's flush. It needs to be at least flush so it doesn't interfere with your side plate when you bolt it down, so it doesn't warp that out of shape. So once we have that, I like to do the valves next. These are a real treat. They have our intake valve here and our exhaust both have this hole through the end, and there's going to be this tiny little pin that's your retainer on these. So this little itty bitty pin here is going to slide through this hole once we get this valve in place. And in order to get this in there, we need to compress that spring and that keeper inside there. So this one goes over here on our intake side. It's the larger of the two valves. Slides right in there, drops down. Right now our lifter is holding that up. So what we want to do is we can actually rotate our camshaft. Actually, our valve spring keeper's retainer is actually holding it up at this point. So need to reach in here. There we go. Should sit down like that. Now, this is the fun part. Highly recommend one of these. It's a valve spring compressor. This will actually slide underneath the retainer of the spring, which is a trick to get in there. Once you do, it's going to tighten down against the top of your valve, and that's going to let you draw the spring and the retainer for the spring up. So what we'll get here is enough space. I'll show you again here. I don't know if you can see in there well, but so right now our valve needs to be rotated because our retainer pin is actually going this way. It's a lot easier this way. So it looks like we need to just turn our valve about 90 degrees, which we can just release this and do that real quick. Alright, we're pretty close there, so now the fun begins. Getting this little itty bitty pin through the top end of that valve stem is tricky, can be frustrating. We use a pair of needle nose pliers on it here. See if we can actually reach in there and actually attempt to do it the first try. Hopefully. Nope. I dropped it. And now it's stuck behind the stuff. Ladder it out. This is actually the worst part of this entire build, is trying to get these retainers and springs compressed and that pin in there. Real problem is getting the tool behind that because there's so much tension. There we go. Alright, now I'll see if I can get the pin back out of there. There. Try this again. Hopefully this goes better this time. Alright. Forgot to mention one thing also. When you lap valves, grind seats, or the valves, have it done, you need to check the clearance between your valve stem and your lifter down here. There's a predetermined amount of gap that they have to have in order for everything to actuate and seat correctly up here. Your intake valve typically will be like 500 to 700 thousandths gap, so you can just take and put like your lifters back in and your cam to hold them, and you check them at full close. So you want to make sure that your lifter isn't moved up or down. You want to make sure it's all the way down, so you can look at your cam in there and see where it's rotated if you have the engine apart, or if you're trying to do it while the engine's together. You basically go through and make sure you're not on the compression stroke, that you're all the way down or in between. You'll be able to tell by watching them, by rolling the engine over by hand. Then you just, if you need to clearance that, there's actually a valve stem grinder that's available that you can do it, but I've done it with a flat file. It's an easy little cheat. You just have to make sure that you pay attention and do it as square as you can and as flat as you can, so you don't have